Hey everybody, welcome to back to the Flipping Junkie podcast. You may have noticed I've changed the intro to the podcast, and I talk a little bit about being a flip pilot. And if you're curious as to what all of that is about, you can go to flippilot.com and find out more. Basically, get an invitation to our closed Facebook group where people that are interested in learning how to work more on their flipping business than in it can communicate with other investors that are doing the same thing. So I think a lot of investors get into this business wanting the freedom that it provides, and it does, but we tend to build a job for ourselves and trying to do everything ourselves, and just trying to help each other kind of build these true businesses where we have help and other people helping us build a team to run our flipping businesses. Go to flippilot.com to find out more and get your invitation to that Facebook group. I'm super excited today about the podcast. I've got Rob LaRevere here, and I said that right? Because I'm thinking Paul Revere now because we talked about it right before.
Yeah, that works.
All right, cool. All right, so Rob is in Indianapolis, and you said Dayton, Ohio as well, right? Is where you guys are investing?
That's correct.
All right, cool. And Rob leads property acquisitions for Holdfolio, and I love that name. That's cool, Holdfolio, a real estate crowdfunding company headquartered in Indianapolis. Under the name Buy to Renew, Rob leads a team focused on purchasing properties in gentrifying neighborhoods. And since relocating to Indiana in 2015, Rob and his partners have purchased over 100 properties for crowdfunding and wholesale opportunities. And for fun, Rob and his wife enjoy traveling, soccer, and recently took up competing in triathlons, which is super cool. Have you guys done one yet?
Yeah, just did one in Tampa actually last month.
How was it?
Pretty wild, man. I'm hooked. I want to do one in Louisville next month, so it was pretty sweet.
Yeah, I think I need to do the same. I had something where they put me under. I don't know if it was a tooth thing or something, but whenever I came to after the procedure, my wife came to pick me up or whatever, and she said the first thing I said was, "I want to do a triathlon."
Nice.
And I don't know, it was just like a drug-induced thing, but
yeah, you got to do it at least once. I mean, even if it's a sprint, what's cool about it is you get to check off each activity as you go through it. So I like that a lot.
Well, cool. Yeah, I just Josh, who's my brother-in-law, but also works with us at Lead Propeller. We went hiking in the Guadalupe Mountains in Texas, so the highest peak in Texas.
Nice.
And I was worried about being able to keep up with him because he's a younger guy. But we hiked, I think we did 24.2 miles of hiking over 2 days.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was kind of painful.
Yeah, that's a workout.
But I survived. I was happy about that. So tell everybody what we wanted to talk about today was wholesaling. You guys do a lot of wholesaling, and that's primarily all you guys do, right, is wholesaling?
Actually, primarily what we do, it's mostly crowdfunding for our portfolios, and we do some wholesaling on the side. So, in Indiana and Ohio, it's very, cash flow positive. We have a lot of opportunities to get renters in there, and because the property taxes are so low, we're able to, get decent returns. So, we mostly focus on single family properties in these two states. We're looking to expand elsewhere, but for now it's right here, Indiana and Ohio. And then if we get properties that don't work with our portfolio numbers, we go ahead and wholesale those off.
Oh, I see. Okay, cool. And therefore the name Holdfolio.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess that doesn't make sense if you're primary wholesaling, so I don't know where I got that. But so I talked to Sterling and Rob the other day, a couple weeks ago, on the phone. They're customers of Lead Propeller, and I was talking about strategy with them. And these guys really know what they're doing, and would you say 60-something properties last year, right?
Yeah, I think it was 68 was the final number.
So really doing a crazy amount of deals. And I wanted to find out how you personally got into the business, and then we'll get into how you guys operate. And so if you wouldn't mind sharing just real quick, what got you interested in real estate and kind of the story behind all of it.
Absolutely. So it was probably March of 2015, and my wife and I had always wanted to be in real estate, wanted to flip houses. We got the HGTV bug, and I had an opportunity. One of my childhood friends was in Indianapolis, actually in real estate. He was working for a big turnkey provider here in the city, and we went up to visit him for March Madness one year, and I saw all these flips he was doing in Fountain Square area, which is a pretty hot neighborhood here in Indianapolis. And, kind of got the bug. And then a couple weeks later, there was an IBJ article, which is the business journal here in Indianapolis. There's an IBJ article about the company, and I was pretty amped. I was like, man, I gotta meet up with you and see if there's any value I can add. And from there, I just kind of went up to Indiana for a week, kind of spent some time, learned what the intricacies of it. I wanted to jump into real estate, and at that point, I decided to make the move.
Nice.
So from there, I found the mentor, figured out if I could bring value, and thankfully I was able to, bring enough value that I was able to find a spot on the team.
Cool. So can we elaborate on that? Because I think a lot of people are struggling with that part of it. It's finding the mentor, and everybody talks about bring them value and they're going to want to work with you. I mean, do you mind sharing what you did to bring value, or
Yeah.
what kind of angle you took to try to get your foot in the door?
Yeah. So, Holdfolio was a startup. It'd been around for a few months at that point, and it was much smaller than it is now. Maybe just put it that way. But when I first started, I was assisting in leasing properties. I was helping out with doing scopes of work, and on the construction side, making sure the contractors are on schedule. I was starting to dive in just a little bit into property acquisitions, and also trying to reach out to investors, people that might be interested in partnering with us. I know when we first started crowdfunding for our first offering, it took us over 3 months. And if you look back now at some of the offerings we're putting up, they're pre-reserved, months in advance to even getting out there. When the reservations hit, typically it's a pretty quick turnaround for the funding actually coming through. So starting out, I just tried to fit in. I looked at myself like a utility tool. If there's anything I could do, I tried to do it. And I wasn't making any money. I was just trying to see if there was an opportunity. And I know you mentioned we talk about a book later on, but just real quick, I'm currently reading a book called Set for Life by Scott Trench, and it's a bigger pockets book. And he talks about in the first part of the book about, getting up your financial runway, like, saving up like 25 grand to make sure that if an opportunity comes up, you can jump on it and you don't have to worry about your finances, hopefully, and you're not worrying about anything going on. So, thankfully I was in a position where I put some money aside. I was able to make this leap of faith with no money coming in. And, as we got rolling and things started doing better, I found that niche in acquisitions where money was more prevalent.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So that's awesome. It's because, you were able to, put in the work for, not much pay, and that kind of got you in because, if you went in and say, hey, I need to make this much money, pay him all this stuff, and and then I'll prove myself, it may not have worked out the same way, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's awesome. So you guys, what is the process? I mean, how are you guys generating leads, and what's the process for you guys going out and taking a look at the houses and determining whether you want to, keep it in the portfolio and then use the crowdfunding? Because I don't know anything about all this crowdfunding stuff. It's alien to me. So if you wouldn't mind sharing all the details.
Sure. Well, first off, we have this great website called Lead Propeller that is able to help generate some leads for us.
Yeah, I heard that thing was awesome.
Besides that, we're doing a lot of direct mail, and for the direct mail, we're targeting absentee owners, code violation lists, expired listings. We also do driving for dollars, and the way we do that is kind of interesting. I know a lot of folks. I don't know how many are actually doing it, but for us, I like the process a lot that we use because some people use pen, pad, paper, go down and write down all the addresses that are going down the street. But little tip that we do is I have an iPhone app, just a memo. Go down the street, keep out my memo. I'm recording all the addresses as I go down. Then after I'm done driving, I send the file to someone on Fiverr. They transcribe it in a Google Doc. And then I have another VA go in, track all the tax records. And then, my total output for time is probably, the drive plus maybe 10, 15 minutes in organizing all this stuff. And then we have a list of, a couple hundred names. So
yeah, it's smart because that's the painful, time-consuming part is, well, I mean, it takes a while to drive around, but that's not as painful as looking up every address and writing down the owner's information. So when you talked about the memo, you're talking about voice recording of the address?
Yeah, just
Okay.
pop it on, let it record as I'm going through. Typical recording is between 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm making sure I'm not doing too much time in the car, but a 5 to 10 minute recording is equivalent to about an hour and a half driving. So,
Right. And so what is the typical number of properties that you find and, when you drive around? So like say, what do you expect to get? Maybe something like 30 addresses per hour, or, I mean, do you have a number like that you shoot for?
yeah, typically it's about 100 an hour or so.
100 an hour. Wow.
And so it's pretty high. A lot of these neighborhoods that we look at, they're urban, so they're older homes. You could tell that they need some work, so we have a pretty high success rate with our driving for dollars. It's more targeted for our direct mail.
So the lower end properties,
Mm-hmm.
you can get them cheaper and get high rents and you just get a better cash flow out of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. What do you look for? This is an argument that Melissa and I have all the time when we were driving for dollars together, is because I would say, write that one down, and it's like a house that just had overgrown grass or something.
Yeah.
And then she would say, what about this one? And it's like peeling paint and maybe like broken windows. And I'm like, nah, I don't think it's vacant. And she'd get mad because it's like I just said, write down the one that's got the high grass, but wouldn't write down this other one. But anyway, I mean, do you guys have, like, do you shoot for something that you feel like it's definitely vacant, or you just look to see if it needs a ton of repairs? You don't care if someone's living there or not?
I just see if it needs a ton of repairs mostly, even if it looks, like it hasn't been maintained recently, whether the grass is long. We live here in Indiana, and the high weeds and grass grow pretty quickly, and you can actually get fined for that if you're not, taking care of it. So, yeah, pretty much anything. The more addresses I put down, the better. If it looks like it's been recently rehabbed or in okay shape, I kind of avoid putting that down because I know it's not going to be a hot lead. But
Right.
The way I look at it, direct mail is pretty inexpensive. And if you're doing it, repetitively on a regular basis, as long as you're getting your face in front of these sellers, then when it's time for them to sell, they're going to be thinking of you.
Right. How many times do you try to hit the drive for dollars leads with your direct mail campaign?
We try to get something out every 3 to 4 weeks. So.
And you mail until they say to stop, or do you guys do like 6 or 7, or do you know how much?
Yeah, so every 6 months, we refresh our driving for dollars list. So if they call and say, knock it off, we're removing them from that list. But for the most part, we're hitting that same list. And oftentimes they're the same people that fall on our absentee owner list or code enforcement violation list. So we make sure that, when we're filtering out these lists that we're selling to our postcard company that we use, they're not just getting spammed with a ton of different types of mail. So.
Right. And are you guys using a local a printing company or mailing company for that, or are you using a national website to send the postcards?
Yeah, we're currently using Postcard Mania in addition to Go Big Printing. We are subscribers to Investor Fuse, and they integrate with Go Big. So we had a couple startup issues when we first started with Go Big. They were supposed to automatically remove all the addresses for our mailings, but that wasn't working for us. So we ended up having to switch back to Postcard Mania, which we found to be a pretty good option as well.
Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. All right, and so whenever you have calls come in, are you taking calls, or you're strictly acquisitions where you're going out and making offers on properties?
No, so we use Pat Live to take our calls, and then they just submit everything through a web form, and it automatically populates an Investor Fuse for me.
Okay. And how many calls would you guys say you guys are getting a day?
Right after a mailing, probably like 10.
Nice.
10 calls. Of that, we might, get a couple visits, 3 or 4 visits. But when we don't have a mailing, 2 weeks after a mailing, it's a little bit slower, maybe one call a day or one call every 2 days. So. Okay.
And what's the reason behind using Pat Live versus have somebody in office taking the calls?
Actually, it's funny you asked that. We're in the process of debating if we want to bring it in house and just have.
I think you should. That's my recommendation, is that you should. I just heard, it's kind of hard to have somebody build that rapport for you through Pat Live, mm-hmm. And I think, we were handling the calls, and we had acquisitions guy we brought on. He was handling the calls and was getting too busy, and we hired a lead intake where it was their sole job to answer the phone and talk. And with that being their sole job, I mean, they also do a lot of follow-up and everything because we're not getting calls all day long. But then they can spend that time to build that rapport and set them up for the appointment. And so when the acquisitions goes to the house to look at it, a lot of times they're saying, hey, we really loved the guy that we talked to. It was like, we really like you guys, and it's, they build that. And I don't think that I'd be surprised if someone's ever told you guys that about Pat Live. It's like, we love the guy at Pat Live. He was awesome. But not that they knew it was Pat Live, but.
Yeah. When we were so initially I was the one taking all the calls, but when we really started ramping up and trying to do volume, it was just kind of overwhelming, especially since I was actually also doing leasing calls at the same time. So I was just getting slammed all the time. Wow, so we outsourced it to Pat Live, and then that really simplified it. And one of the reasons we went with them was just because, it is all English speakers as the native language. So they'd also pick up the call 24/7. And if it is someone that is pretty motivated, I think we set a limit of like $25,000 or less, that they do take information and then they get forwarded to me. And then from there, I'm able to hopefully close it out. But what you're saying about bringing it in-house, that totally makes sense, and something that I'll definitely bring to the table with my partners. So.
Yeah. Well, it said you guys were already talking about doing that maybe. But I just think you'll have better luck with it, because you work so hard to get those calls come in if you don't maximize what you're doing with each one of them. But so people call in, you get the information. How are you determining which ones you're going to look at?
Typically, a lot of it comes down to what the seller's motivation is. A lot of people are tire kickers, they just want to know what they're paying. They don't have any incentive to move. At that point, we keep them on a follow-up list. If they seem like they could be interested, maybe relocating at the end of the year, we'll typically meet them and check it out. Ideally, it's just about building the rapport, trying to figure out what the problem is. And if I can check out every property, that'd be ideal. So, and then between checking it out myself, I also have an assistant. So one of us is going to these properties. So it's not all me or all him. So we're splitting up the duties.
And with the properties that you guys are targeting, do you find that it's homeowners living at the properties, or is it tenants and the landlords or the owners calling you, or they're vacant? What do you have a certain majority of houses fit one of those?
I say 3 out of 4 times it's an absentee owner that's calling us, landlord, and the one time is typically the homeowner.
Do you guys have better luck with one over the other?
No, it's kind of hit or miss. I guess just by volume, I feel like we have more absentee owners close out, but yeah. Are
they typically people that didn't want to be landlords, or they went into it wanting to be landlords?
Typically people that are just looking to downsize. So they have maybe a package deal, maybe 10 or more properties, and then they're just looking to offload a couple of them that need a little bit more work. Maybe the tenants just moved out. So in those situations, it's always great because you get that one property, you build that track record with them, and hopefully you're their first call when they go to sell it next time.
Yeah, nice. And so, what is the process? How do you determine what you want to pay for it, and then how do you present the offers and go through that process?
So based on the neighborhoods, I have a pretty good idea of what our all-in cost is going to be. So we start out with this, talking to the seller, explaining to them what we think that their house might be worth. But we really need to get through there, check out the rehab, and then from there, I can see if it needs a new roof, furnace, what kind of big ticket items it hits. And then, we just basically have a formula in our Google Excel sheet that we plug in our numbers, see what we can offer, and we might start a little bit lower than what we can pay, obviously just to leave room for negotiation, but that's pretty much the process. Okay,
with those type of properties, you're not using like a 70% of ARV type calculation, right? What kind of calculation do you guys use?
We use CCR, so we plug in, pretty much all the information. We have an assessed value tab that helps us calculate what our taxes are going to be along with what our insurance rate is. There's a column for rent, what the purchase price is going to be, and then also what the rehab is. And so as long as it spits out a favorable CCR, we know what we can pay.
All right, cool. And what does CCR stand for?
CCR stands for cash on cash return.
Okay, cool. All right, and what kinds of cash on cash returns are you guys looking for?
Ooh, that's a trade secret.
Okay, well, you don't have to share if you don't want to. Let's see. What And so when you make those offers, how are you guys doing that? Are you guys in person, preferring to be in person and fill out that contract and give it to them? And what is your process for doing that?
Yeah. So I guess I'll walk you through the entire process. Seller calls, hop on the phone with them, set up an appointment. I know I'm going on this appointment, so I'm making sure that the property's in our Google sheet. I can play around with what I anticipate the rehab numbers to be. Then I take a contract with me as long as I meet with the seller, and as long as the numbers, the rehab is what I expect. I basically try to get it under contract immediately upon meeting the seller after we check it out together. I have the app on my phone, so I can go back. I can change the numbers a little bit if I think the rent's going to be a little bit lower or higher, or if the rehab actually comes in, the same, lower or higher. I can mess around with the numbers from the spot. So ideally, I get it wrapped up after the first meeting. Sometimes it takes a little bit of persistence, but.
Okay, so you have most of the calculation done, and the only thing that you might change is your estimate or your guess of how much repairs it's going to need.
Right.
And then that way the number is very simple to calculate while you're there, and then you can present that offer to the seller. And do you write out a contract? Do you fill out a contract when you make the offer, or do you verbally just tell them what you would pay?
I fill out a contract form.
Yeah.
So typically, I normally, kind of one of my strategies, I tell them, based on this rehab, I think this is what we'll be able to pay. Will this number work for you? And then kind of wait for that pause and see what the reaction is. And then, if it's positive, then I say, well, I have a contract right here. If you want to get it taken care of, we can close within 5 to 7 days as soon as title work's ready. So we close on, we were talking about a little bit about wholesaling. So we'll close on every property first, unless it's just a tiny, deal that just needs a simple assignment. But we'll close on all the properties ourselves, so we don't have to wait for anyone else to come through and wait that 30-day lag time for a seller to actually get what they want. So.
Oh, nice. And what's the decision then on doing the hold versus wholesaling? How are you guys determining what you're going to do with it?
Yeah, it depends on a lot of it where the property is located. So I mentioned Fountain Square earlier today. Ideally, we have some properties in that pocket, but that's such a flipper's haven right now that if we can pick up a property for $30,000 and then flip it to someone for 50 or 60, and that would give them still plenty of room to hit their ARVs. I mean, that's a huge wholesale, and that's one way. Other ways, if it works with the CCR and it's in a neighborhood that we like as far as a rental community, we'll hold on to it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and so I guess, if you can wholesale a property and make $20,000 plus on an assignment or a wholesale, well, not an assignment because you guys are closed on them. Wholesale, it's just a no-brainer, right? You could dump that money back into marketing and generate more.
Absolutely.
That's nice. So whenever you guys do that, though, what is your preferred method of doing the wholesaling? So you put it under a contract, you actually close on it, so you own the house. Mm-hmm. How are you guys marketing that deal?
Right now, a lot of it's been, popping it on the MLS because the market is so saturated with buyers out there, mm-hmm. that a lot of times these properties will just fly off the market. We clean it up. If there's a bunch of junk inside, we'll trash haul it, and we won't really make any repairs if we know that the intention is to wholesale it. But as far as the buyers list, we have a few people that we send out the deals to. Some investors that we've worked with in the past, want to know what I don't want to call it junk, but what our properties that don't work with the Holdfolio system's numbers are. If we could send it to them, and then they might be interested in closing on it. So, but because wholesaling isn't our primary business, we just try to do it the easiest way, and that's put it on the market. Right.
So whenever you put it on the market, so are you guys listing that yourself, and so you're really just dealing with the 3% commission for the buyer's agent?
Yeah, typically.
Okay. All right, nice. And then how long do those typically stay on the market?
I'd say within 3 weeks. If we have we have offers on it immediately, but yeah, within 3 weeks we have a pretty good idea of when it'll be closing.
Oh, cool. So. Yeah, so I just wanted to know, because you can maximize how much profit you make. If it always flies off the market, like that first couple minutes of putting it on, it's like, man, we could have asked for more or something. Do you guys have people bid up on some of them to where you have sort of bidding wars on them?
Yeah, we've had a few situations where we've had to request, highest and best.
Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are always fun. When you're on that side of it, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Have you considered auctions?
You mean as a way of
Selling
selling
it?
the property ourselves? That's not an option we've looked into. Do you recommend it?
Well, I've never done it either. I used to hear people doing that all the time, and it always seemed like kind of a lot of work to me. But just kind of weird too, like auctioning the house. But
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought of it just now, but maybe that is something somebody's doing and making a ton of money. But I think that was happening a lot back in 2006 when it was really hot before the market tanked. A lot of investors were auctioning properties to investors. So I wonder if that's died for some reason or if people are still doing that. But it seems like it's even hotter than it was in 2006, so you would think it would make sense to do it. But
I know as far as the buyer side, last year we picked up, I think at one auction we walked away with like 10 properties. And then this year we've gone to, probably twice as many auctions, but the market has been so much higher this year that people are bidding up the properties that, in our opinion, aren't worth what they're paying for them.
Right. So that would make sense for you guys to do the auction and be the one benefiting from people paying too much, right?
Yeah, maybe I need to look into that.
Yeah. I'm going to edit that whole part out so we don't have everybody else do it. No, but no, we don't really edit the podcast, guys. Let's see. So you that's how you guys wholesale those wholesale ones. Now I'm really interested to find out the Holdfolio ones, the ones that you guys are keeping, and this crowdfunding business. Do you mind going into detail about how all of that works?
Yeah, absolutely. So we basically take 10 rental properties that are already cash flowing properties we already own, and we put them on our website, and investors can register, become users, and build a relationship with our company. And they have the opportunity to basically buy ownership in these properties. We bundle the properties into offerings of 10, and so you basically have 10 income-producing assets there. And so all our calculations, last I checked, I believe, are based on 8 out of 10 properties being vacant. Or annual return is typically between 8 to 12%.
Wait, you said 8 to 10, 8 out of 10 being occupied?
Yeah, excuse me.
Okay.
So we calculate all our returns based on 8 properties being occupied, 2 being vacant, so that, if worst case scenario, if we have those 10 properties and 2 are vacant, our numbers aren't affected. Right. And when we work with these investors, they're buying ownership in this company. So we organize the properties into an LLC. From there, they're able to buy the ownership, and they're entitled to basically a direct proportional rent or percentage of the rent and the income that these properties produce. So that's not my specialty. We have a girl on board that specializes in talking with investors and giving you all the nitty gritty. But as far as a brief overview, we basically take 10 income producing assets. We crowdfund equity out, and then investors basically have a seat at the table.
All right, cool. So, I mean, how is that so much more beneficial than just having, getting loans and just owning those and controlling all of the equity? I mean, what's the reason behind doing that way? It seems like a lot of work, right?
So for an investor, it's completely passive. On a quarterly basis, we send out, an ACH automatic deposit. At the end of the year, we send out a K-1 statement, so investors are able to get the tax benefits of owning real estate. We have an in-house property management company that takes care of all the day-to-day issues. It was responsible for leasing out the properties. Our properties, our portfolios are all, 100% occupied right now. And we avoid any vacancies by doing 30-day pre-marketing for property. So if we know that a property is going to become vacant in the next 30 days, we're able to, per our lease agreement, start marketing that property so that the turn time is much smaller than what it might be if we had to wait.
Smart, yeah.
So,
yeah, it's smart. So, all right. So are you guys making money on the property management? I mean, how are you guys making a profit to make it worthwhile to do the crowdfunding and do it that way?
Yeah. So Holdfolio keeps a 20 to 30% ownership in each of the companies. So that means, we're selling 70 to 80% ownership to investors. So we keep our interests aligned so that, we're motivated to make sure that the portfolios are performing. If the rent is coming in, we get a percentage of that rent. So we're looking at it, we could go and, wholesale all these deals and make, profit on all of them, but we're allowing investors to come in at a price basically where we're at, our all-in cost of purchase price plus rehab, and, get a property that's significantly under market. And so by keeping our interests aligned and basically by making a passive income opportunity for an investor, that's why it's more beneficial.
Yeah, it's nice. So you guys you're making some profit on them buying the equity, right? And then you're getting also the cash flow for your percentage of equity that you still control.
So we're focused mostly on just on the rental income. We don't look at the portfolio raise as necessarily a profit opportunity. There is some overhead built in to account for legal fees, everything else that goes into putting a portfolio together. But we're basically mostly looking at putting the property out there and then using the cash that we're able to basically pull back out to scale it into another offering. So we're looking at it more into what we can do by building it to scale than what we can do just by doing the one-offs.
Right. But what I meant by that, I guess, was that, so let's say you have, I forgot what you said the numbers were on these typical deals, but, let's say you've got maybe a total of $50,000 in the property and it rents for enough to where people, you're selling the equity. Do you ever sell more equity than the $50,000 that you have into it? Because the value of the property is, probably a lot more than $50,000. You see what I'm saying? Or are you guys just pulling your money back out of what you had in it?
Right.
And then retaining
we're mostly just looking at pulling the money back out and then moving it into another opportunity.
Okay. So. All right. Yeah, that's cool. Makes my brain start spinning on all this. I need to read more and learn more about all this. But I don't know. It also kind of seems like a little bit of work too. But you said you guys have somebody running that whole side of things for you guys, right?
Yeah, we have a investor relationships woman named Kristen that is phenomenal. So.
And do you guys typically sell these packages to the same, you have repeat buyers for these different properties?
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically, someone might say, and I forgot to mention, but the minimum investment for the single family homes is a $10,000 investment. So someone can basically get, $10,000 worth of ownership in a property package. Let's say that it raises $350,000 and they decide they want to put 10 grand in here. They might decide to do this for one portfolio, and then a month from now we're offering another one. They might put another 10 grand. So now they have $20,000 invested among 20 different properties. It further diversifies their risk. It allows them to continue to make good stable returns. And like I said, we're still doing all the hard work, sending them the returns, the K1 at the end of the year, and doing all the property management. So.
All right. So what are you guys on the hook for, though? I mean, with when you do this. So, let's say for some reason something horrible happened to the market and you're not able to keep them all rented. And then the risk at that point is basically spread among all the people that bought into it, right? I mean, it's not like you guys are guaranteeing anything, right?
Right. So we do have an opportunity. I think it's for our apartment that it's a guaranteed 8% return. Because we also do multifamilies. So we have a 146 unit apartment, and then we're closing on another one in the next month.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, back to what we're liable for. The risk is spread among all the investors. We buy these properties at such a low price that if the market were to tank, the investors aren't really going to be that affected because they're in at the same level as an investor would be. We're focused on the cash flow, and we're buying in these cities like Indianapolis and Dayton that have pretty strong economics overall, where there is a demand for jobs and for a healthy rent environment.
Oh, nice. All right, cool. Well, you guys have goals to do almost double what you did last year, right? I mean, you told me earlier that you guys are looking to expand and growing like crazy. What? So you started in Indianapolis and then moved to Dayton after?
Yeah.
Okay. What are those markets? What is the size of those markets?
Indianapolis is about a million people or so, hovering around there. I'm not sure what Dayton is off the top of my head, but
similar sized or a little bit smaller, maybe.
It's a little bit smaller, but overall we found it to be very similar as far as the properties are involved, like Indy, just a little bit higher taxes in Ohio, and what we normally be able to get for rent for $700 in Indianapolis, we're looking at maybe $675, $685 in Dayton. So it's a little bit higher taxes, a little bit lower rents, but yeah. As long as we count 4 on the front end, we're good.
Yeah. So you get there's state income taxes in those 2 states?
I know there is in Indiana. I'm not sure off the top of my head about Ohio.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that's the reason why Texas property taxes are so high, is we don't have that state income tax. But yeah, this has been great, and it's really opened up some things I didn't know anything about, and I'm going to read up a lot more on that. Do you guys have any information that you guys provide? I mean, just like even something that explains it to the investors that look into working with you guys?
Yeah, Holdfolio. If they just go to our website, wholesale.com, they can register and start a relationship with us. It requires a phone call, figure out if the interests are aligned, if we see eye to eye on what we're looking to do, and if the investor has any questions, they can certainly ask Kristen. I know I gave a pretty brief overview, but she can definitely fill in any missing gaps and answer any questions that I didn't.
Awesome. And then for wholesaling properties, if anybody is in those markets and wants to get on your buyers list, is there a way that they can do that?
Yeah, so for all acquisitions, I'd recommend reaching out to me on my website, buytorenewindianapolis.com, or I'm also on Bigger Pockets, and they can find me on there.
Okay, buytorenewindianapolis.com. And I'll put these on the show notes page, the links to Holdfolio and then buytorenewindianapolis.com on the show notes page, which is going to be at flippingjunkie.com/79, flippingjunkie.com/79. And really appreciate you being on and sharing all that information with us. And is there, I talked about a book that you would recommend, and you recommended the one earlier. Do you have any other books that you recommend?
I recommend Relentless by Tim Grover. I listened to it on Audible. The narrator is phenomenal and really going to get you amped to take on the day. So,
Relentless by, who was it?
Tim Grover.
Tim Grover. To check that out. I haven't heard that one. And what was the first one that you mentioned?
The first book was called Set for Life by Scott Trench.
All right, cool. All right, Rob, really appreciate it, and it was a great show. And is this the first time you've interviewed? Because you were pretty calm about it all. Usually people are a little bit more nervous.
Well, thanks for saying that. Yeah, this was my first podcast interview.
Oh, cool. Yeah, no, you did great.
Thank you for saying that.
Really do appreciate it. And so that's about it. So take care, and we'll be in touch.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Vinny.